We're glad that you have joined us on our 938 podcast every week on Tuesday morning, 10 o'clock Central Time. Our podcast comes live to you, and so we are glad that you've joined us. Hopefully in the last few weeks, we've done about 20 of these already. This is basically a time when we can do all things missions, and it's times when we talk about missions around the world. We talk about our missionary ministries, and then also interview missionaries. But as well, we like to present to you some things that go on in the mission office as far as services that we provide to our missionaries. So we're glad that you've joined. Also, make sure that you subscribe to this so that you can also get notifications for future podcasts. We have a lot of good podcasts lined up, a lot of good subjects, I think, that you will find very helpful when you think about world missions. As the world that we live in seems to be pretty chaotic in so many different ways, natural disasters, wars, fightings, terrorist acts, so many things that our missionaries encounter sometimes on a daily basis where they live, it became evident to us that we needed to be more prepared in our security for our missionaries. And so we thought it would be very proactive in thinking about how can we prepare our missionaries to be less of a target and also just prepared in case anything comes their way. And so our guest today is none other than Steve Bender. Welcome, Steve.
Well, thank you. Good to be back here, John.
Yeah, and Steve's one of your responsibilities, of many responsibilities, is to oversee our security training. And also if anything comes up, a situation comes up around the world, you're the first one then that we get notified, and then you kind of get things put in motion to take care of things.
Right. You know, John, as you said, we look at our world today, and it's pretty chaotic. In fact, there's a lot of attacks on Americans abroad that didn't exist before. And specifically, a little over 20 years ago, our office watched an incident that took place in the Philippine Islands when New Tribes missionaries Martin and Gracia Burnham were abducted by a terrorist organization and held for 376 days, and before the final rescue attempt, and that incident, Martin lost his life. And so we said, if that happened to some of our missionaries, what would we do? How would we react? And so we began to get very serious about security, and from that's what bore our opportunities to work with a couple of different mission or security organizations. And then we ended with, and now concentrate our efforts with Fort Sherman Academy that helps us.
Yeah. I remember we went through some of the training with those other organizations just so we could be prepared and be ready. And
exactly.
They even came to our building and trained us. We even went through a scenario that might have been happening around the world, and went through a lot of things like that. And then we came across Fort Sherman Academy. What does Fort Sherman Academy offer us? What do they do for us?
Well, Fort Sherman Academy is located in Pinehurst, Idaho, and they're one of the leaders in faith-based security services worldwide. They work with several major mission organizations that, we'll not name all of them, but they train mission personnel such as ourselves, executives in mission organizations, and also missionaries. That as they go out into the world, especially the more difficult places, that they can do so and keep intact the integrity of the mission that they're there for, and to tell people about Jesus Christ.
Yeah, good. And I think you've even had some specialized training in specific areas, even through their highest level, but then also trained as a trainer.
Right. They have several different levels of training. They have an 11-day on-site that is their premier training for personal security and hostage survival. It's the ultimate training, and I was able to go through that, as well as about 450 other hours of training to prepare. And so from that stemmed the fact that I'm certified to teach their basic A-level training, and we do that for all of our missionaries.
Good. So they come alongside the mission office. What are some ways that they really have helped us and are ready to help us be prepared?
Well, probably the major way is they stand ready to help us at a moment's notice. We keep them on a retainer contract throughout the year. They have trained myself and some others, and they've come here, as you said, to our office, and we've gone through specialized training as to how would we respond in the case of a crisis situation. And it doesn't have to be just a terrorist activity. It can be a natural disaster, and what should we do? So they monitor things worldwide. We get daily, I get probably 15 emails a day from security organizations and Fort Sherman Academy letting us know what's taking place in different hot spots of the world. They help us in knowing how to respond to those to minimize the risk to the rest of our mission force and to missionary families that are back here in the United States.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we've set up as they've worked with us is our crisis action team in our office alone. Tell us a little bit about that.
Correct. We have a crisis action team that works here in our office. With everybody has certain responsibilities that in the event of a major crisis, we would go into our crisis mode. We would get together here in our conference room, pull together the resources that we would need depending on the type of crisis it would be. It's a response team because missionaries are sent from their local church, and we know that, and I think most everybody in the local churches understand that, but they also think that the mission office sends them. But it's actually the responsibility of that local independent Baptist church that sends out the missionary. But it would be naive to think that every church could respond exactly like they need to. So our office takes care of that responsibility so that in the event our crisis action team comes together with the expertise and the knowledge to know who to respond to, what to say to the press, how to react to ransom demands or anything like that. And thank God we've not had a situation to that degree yet, and hopefully we never will. But we need to be prepared, and we are.
Right. Very good. And you are what we would call the commander.
Yes.
And so whenever something comes across, it goes right to you, and then you communicate with everybody from there.
Correct. I would be the one that our missionaries would respond to initially, that they would contact, and then I call together our team. And sometimes it's just you and I might converse about a situation. It's not that imperative that we pull together the entire team. Mm-hmm. But in cases it is, everybody's ready, and we are prepared to respond 24 hours and ongoing if need be, ever how long that crisis may last.
Good. And so another aspect is then also preparing our missionaries. Before they go, or even as missionaries, they can come get some extra training. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we work with our missionaries, and it's imperative that every one of our missionaries have this training. Yes. Because in the event they are caught up in any kind of a crisis, we need to get them the right kind of help, and it determines how they've been trained and if they know how to respond. So several years ago, more than 15 years ago, I think, we started training our missionaries and stepped up that training every year to a higher level. And so all of our brand new missionaries that come through candidate school, or as we call it now, advanced mission training, because it's more than just candidate school, they go through an 8-hour course so that they know how to respond in the time of crisis, and we're ready to help them.
Yeah, good. And some people might think, well, this is just for them as they're on the mission field, but it's also for them while they're on furlough or deputation here in the United States.
Absolutely. It's not just about a crisis situation as we would think about it in the form of a terrorist airplane crash, a national disaster, but a crisis could be just a carjacking. And so the training that we give to our missionaries helps them to understand how to be safe when they're traveling, hotel security, auto security, how to watch out for carjackings, how to see if someone's tailing you, just responsibility about your personal items, and traveling through an airport, making sure. Yes. And a general rule is that if you can't touch it or see it, it won't belong to you. Mm-hmm. Someone else will take it. And so we just try to bring back into conscience the thought of security to our people. Yeah.
And a lot of little tips, even just to be careful, because you don't know if someone's going to try and scam you or something. I remember talking about finding a wallet on the ground or something. If you pick it up and then
Right.
You say, hey, I found this. Someone says, that's mine. Then they could accuse you, hey, it used to have $500, now just $100.
Exactly.
Just little things like that. Be careful of.
It's little things that are common sense, but as has been said, common sense ought to be renamed rare sense because it's not as common anymore.
Right.
And so we have to be very, very careful about all of those incidents. And so we go through a lot of the different scams, but the problem is that scams are being reinvented every day.
They're scheming all
and
the
so,
time.
we see it on the news sources, all kinds of security websites and sources. We see new scams, but we try to keep our missionaries at least briefed on the latest ones out there.
Good. And then when they arrive on the field, I know that there's some things that they need to do to help just prepare themselves and make sure that they're kind of protected in different ways.
Right. It's important when our missionaries arrive on the field, especially if it's in a country where the United States has good relationships and a U.S. embassy or even just a consulate. It's imperative that all of our missionaries immediately, within the first few days on the field, register with the United States Embassy. The United States, as a United States citizen, the United States government has a responsibility to aid their citizens, whether they're living in the U.S. or abroad. So that's a good thing. And we also talk about the safety tips of what to look for, even in places that you're going to rent, or if the Lord allows to purchase on the mission field. Areas to look for, things, talk to the locals that are there, just get the safety tips that you can and be as prepared as possible.
Yeah. Even looking for some kind of home security systems or a corporation, a company that watches over. I remember in Kenya, we would hire a security company that if anything happened, we would push this alarm and they would come and help us out.
A lot of countries will have that. Some countries, you want to make friends with the local law enforcement people in your area, especially if it's a little village. You make friends with them. There are alarm systems that you can get that are internet-based or, and don't require an outside source. And so oftentimes just the alarm going off will scare off a would-be thief. And we talk about, safety of making sure your home is secure, having a safe room inside your home should someone attempt a home invasion. How would you respond to that? It's best let them have your stuff. That can all be replaced. We all talk about that and say, it's just a car, it's just a radio, it's just a computer. But then sometimes if we don't think about it ahead of time, we do stupid stuff to protect a $100 item, and it could cost their life.
Right. And I think even in this day and age, more than before, the missionaries' children, there's so much that goes on in our world today with trafficking and all that. They've got to even be more secure with their kids.
Absolutely. The days when you were in Kenya and your daughter was young and Janelle and I were in Korea and our kids, they could roam the streets and with no thought of anything happening to them. Everything was safe. Well, not so anymore, even on the streets in the United States of America. And so we have to make sure that our children know what to do and how to respond. And so there are even things on a child's level that we talk to the parents about so that they can help their children to respond.
Right.
Simple things like if someone were to attempt a home invasion and you had to escape out of your house. When I was a kid, when we had a fire plan during Fire Prevention Month, and so we would come home from school and tell our parents, hey, we've got to find a place to gather outside the house, and we'd talk about the escape routes out of the house. And then once we did escape, where would we meet at? Under the big walnut tree or under the big rock or whatever it might be. And so those are things that we try to help our missionaries to teach their children.
Good.
Because we're living in this world today where you can't take anything for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. And then in some locations, it's pretty insecure and they're maybe a little more dangerous or anti-American. So we talk to missionaries even of having an escape plan. How would you escape a country that comes into war, or having certain statements that they would say? Tell us a little bit about that.
There's a certain safe thing that our missionaries are taught in the training, that if they need help, if they're detained by security forces or they're detained by the bad guys, that if it comes down to it and they need help from outside, They have a certain number that they call and ask for a person, and that alerts us that it is an emergency situation. And so we talk to them also about having things prepared, having a go bag. When you're on the mission field outside the United States, one of the major things you want to make sure you always know where it's at is your U.S. passport.
Yes.
And so having your passport, having some travel documents in place, having some cash on hand, that if you need to get away, but not just those things, but what about some water or maybe a few snack items, especially if you have young children. They're going to get hungry a lot quicker, and they can't handle it as much as you or I would, or our adult missionaries. And then also, not just those things, but the documents that they would need. We talk about if you carried your birth certificate with you, those things that could be easily grabbed because they're in one place and prepared, but secure to bug out with.
And there's been a number of times that we've had to help missionaries through different difficult situations, and we can't give all the details, of course, but even, for example, we helped one who there was fighting in their country, part of Africa, and we had to help them get from there out of the country, through another country, place to stay, all kinds of things.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
You know what? One of our crisis team came together. We didn't physically come together on spot, but I was out of this area when that took place, but one of our other members of our team was working with that missionary, calling ahead, talking to missionaries in a neighboring country, trying to make their escape route, even booking a hotel for them along the way, from here in a foreign country. And so we were working on their behalf, paving their way so that they could get out, and thankfully they did. Part of it also entails our emergency evacuation. In the case of a medical emergency, our crisis team could come together and take care of issues like that as well, working, for the most part, our medical plan that we self-funded plan administrate. They take care of all of that for us, but there are instances where we need to come alongside and help with a few details.
Yeah. And then also with the training you've had, not only just to help them out of something, but then following up, counseling, encouraging. That's all part of it, isn't it?
We've had missionaries that made a mistake, and they got in with they got into a vehicle and traveled with some people, and they were held, and it was a pretty harrowing experience for them. And you know what? One of the things that people say when I tell them, hey, call me anytime, day or night. This is my cell phone number. It's on 24 hours a day. And people have called me late at night here in the United States and said, well, it's not really an emergency. I'm not sure. And I said, it is to you. And so therefore it is to us as well. This particular incidents, the people were released. After a while, they just took some money from them. There was no physical abuse or anything that took place. But after we repatriated them back to the United States, we were able to go down and meet with them and debrief and walk through some things and get them connected with some counseling help that helped them to deal with it. And I think it made a huge impact in their life. So it's not just the fact of when it's actually happening, but it's after the fact as well.
And some of that specific high-level training you've done has brought your feelings and understanding of what they might be feeling in those very hard times, that it helps you.
Absolutely. That's one of the things when we were going through the training there on site in Idaho, and I'll just say this, that every aspect of that training, I knew where I was physically, I knew mentally where I was, but the Fort Sherman Academy had orchestrated things so well and so intensely. I felt like I was being held by some bad guys in a foreign country in a camp that that very well could have ended up in the loss of my life. And so as I'm going through those things, some of the missionaries from other organizations said to me, why in the world are you doing this? You're one of the directors in your mission organization, and why are you here? And I said, so that I know how to respond exactly to my missionaries if they are in a crisis like this. I will know what they were feeling. I will know the emotional experiences they had. and I will go through that with them. And just a few days after I returned from that intensive training, we had a missionary go through a crisis, and his wife called me. And when she called, my mind transported back just 4 days earlier when I was in the same situation. And I knew exactly the emotions and all of the things that those missionaries were going through. And so it helped me to be able to respond and to help our missionaries. And so that's why we do what we do.
Yeah. Amen. Good. Well, when do we do our training? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we make sure that every new missionary goes through the training during the advanced mission training. That's held once a year in July here in Springfield, Missouri, right here in this very room, actually. And so it's where the bulk of the training is held. And so all of our brand new missionaries go through that during advanced mission training, which this year will be July 19 to 23. And so they will have 6 to 8 hours of training during that time. And we also invite our career missionaries that maybe they've already been through the training, but it's always good to go through it as a refresher.
Right.
And obviously it costs money. I am the trainer. I don't benefit from it, but we do pay a royalty back to Fort Sherman Academy of $35 per person that goes through the training, and the missions office covers the expense of all that for our missionaries.
Yeah. And that what that does is it kind of puts them on the list then, so if something happens, Fort Sherman Academy knows how they have been trained, so perhaps how they might respond.
Exactly. That, if a U.S. citizen, what I'm told is if a U.S. citizen comes into a crisis situation outside of the country, if they're taken hostage, then the FBI gets involved in that. And what they will look for is what kind of training has this individual or individuals had. And so when they go through our class and they go through the training, I watch every individual that comes through. I know if they're paying attention, if they're absorbing the information, if they know how to respond, because just like our U.S. military, they're trained over and over and over in the same thing so that they respond from muscle memory and not just having to think about it. Yeah. And so when our missionaries go through the training, then I have to send a report to Fort Sherman Academy and said, okay, these people have been through our training and they have satisfactorily passed the test. And I'm confident that if something took place, they would know how to respond. And so the FBI would say, okay, this person knows. So it's a higher level of, we can work with them on a higher level than it's just someone who's not had any training at all.
Right, good. And then not only do we train our new missionaries and the veterans can come and sit in on to be get a refresher, are there other times when we might help train others or churches? I know that we've done that a few times.
There has been times, and we would welcome that opportunity again. A couple of 3 or 4 different instances I've gone out at the invitation of a local church that said, look, we've got a mission team that's going to be going to a field, or we want our leaders to be trained, and so would you come and put on the training here at our church? And so obviously if the time is open, I'm happy to go and do so. Oftentimes they will pay the expense of having me come for, a motel room and food and that, so it's not a cost to the mission office. But I put on the training, and when we do that, we invite local pastors and youth pastors that might be leading mission trips. And also we put out the word to all of our missionaries that are on deputation or furlough that, hey, I'm going to be doing this training here in this vicinity. If you'd like to come and sit in on it for a refresher or for the first time, you're more than welcome to do so. So I've done that in Texas, California, Kansas City, a few other places, and with COVID, everything shut down.
Yeah.
But now things are beginning to open up again worldwide. Missionaries are being able to get back on the mission fields, and churches are thinking about mission trips again. And so this would be a good opportunity to put that training out there, because the more people that are trained, the more ministries have the potential to be taken care of, and so that there's no harm that's done by the visiting team.
Wow, that's good. That's good. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this time together, this podcast, and I think you'll find that there's a lot of information, a lot of things in the mission office that we do that perhaps you don't know about, and this may have been one of them. Not only do we train our missionaries to prepare them, but we also are trained ourselves so that we can back them up,
Right.
just like you've heard today from Brother Steve. So is there something else that you'd like to say as we
Yeah,
close?
there is one other thing. I want to thank all the churches of the Baptist Bible Fellowship and others that support the missionary care offering.
Yes.
Because we instituted what we call the missionary care offering here in our office. And, this training doesn't come free. And Fort Sherman Academy, they're a great leader in faith-based security, but we have to pay for their service like we do anything in the world. And so we keep them on a retainer throughout the year. We pay them. We pay for the training for all of our missionaries from the missionary care offering. And so I want to say thanks to those that support the care offering. A lot of local churches do it, individuals do it, and maybe God would lay it on someone else's heart to say, hey, we want to be a part of that because it helps preserve our people, our resources that are going out to fulfill the Great Commission. So thank you.
Amen. That's good. And so we want you to be praying for us as a mission office as we continue to do our best to oversee and help all the security issues with our missionaries around the world. You never know when you wake up and come to work. This is one of my things every day. I'm wondering, is there going to be something that happens today where we're going to have to bring this together? But we want to be ready and be there for our missionaries. And so I hope that you'll understand the mission office comes alongside the sending church and helps, and we've been trained and prepared, and then we can help every missionary around the world through the BBFI so that we can help them in any kind of unforeseen situation. Thanks for joining us on this 938 podcast, and we hope to see you again next week. God bless you.